In 1947, a new character burst onto the literary scene and into pop culture, one that would epitomize the tough anti-hero who works independently of the law. The character was Mike Hammer, and the novel was I, the Jury by Mickey Spillane. The book was an instant success, leading to more Mike Hammer novels, a string of movies, television shows, and a comic strip. However, in the midst of Spillane's rising success in the 1950s, he decided to step away from writing. So why would a successful, best-selling writer with a popular character suddenly decide to take a break? There's more to the story. Mickey Spillane was born Frank Morris Spillane on March 9, 1918 in Brooklyn, New York. Nicknamed Mickey by his father, the young Spillane was quickly drawn to writing and telling stories. By the time he entered high school, he had already had short stories published in the New Jersey Elizabeth Daily Journal, mostly about bootleggers. After graduating from high school, he attended Kansas State University, intending to study pre-law. But he needed extra money and started submitting short stories to national magazines. At that time, they would pay up to $20 a story, and Mickey could sometimes write up to 4 a day. Since he was already making more as a writer than the dean of his school, he dropped out to pursue it full-time. While working at Gimbel's department store, Mickey became friends with future comic book writer Joe Gill and his brother Ray, who was an editor at Funnies, Inc., a company that packaged comics for publishers, and he told Spillane about opportunities in the comic book market. At that time, comic books needed 2 pages of text to fulfill a postal requirement for a second-class mailing permit. Spillane started writing short stories for comics featuring Batman, Superman, Captain Marvel, and others. Eventually, he created his own character, Mike Danger, but it didn't do well. Mickey's plans changed after Pearl Harbor. He joined the Army Air Corps and spent much of World War II working as a flight instructor stationed in Greenwood, Mississippi. After the war, he returned to New York with the intention of continuing his work in comics, but the industry was experiencing a slump. By this time, Mickey was married, and what he really wanted to do was make enough money to move out of the city into upstate New York. He knew that writing short stories for magazines was not going to get him the amount he needed, so he figured the best way was to write a novel and get it published. He rebranded his character Mike Danger to Mike Hammer and wrote I, the Jury in 9 days. His technique for writing a novel was a simple one that he would use throughout his career. Think of a good ending and work everything in the story up to that point. The book faced multiple rejections for being too dirty and too violent, but as luck would have it, Mickey met Roscoe Fawcett, whose family owned Fawcett Publications, a company that mainly distributed comic books. Fawcett was sure the book would sell, so he made a deal with Signet Books. If they printed it, he would distribute it. The book was a huge success and gave Spillane the money he needed. He continued writing, and by 1951, his 3 Mike Hammer novels were the best-selling mysteries of all time. By 1956, he had written 6 novels, and all 6 were in the top 10 lists of best-selling American fiction in history. Although his books sold well, they were scorched by critics who called them atrocious and even nauseating. But Spillane didn't write for critics. He wrote for the common blue-collar man, who he did not call his readers, but customers. People who enjoyed reading about a character who defied the rules and enacted justice in an unjust world. Hammer carried a .45, a weapon that Spillane knew many veterans would be familiar with. Spillane also never gave Hammer a physical description, allowing the reader to more readily identify himself with the character. He also freely admitted that he didn't write for the sake of art, but for the sake of money, and that meant he had to give his customers what they wanted. Eventually, the film industry took notice, and in the early 50s, producer Victor Seville bought the film rights to Spillane's published novels, as well as an option on any new novels that he would write until 1958. But Spillane was not happy with the films, particularly the casting of Biff Elliott as Hammer. Spillane had his own ideas about who should play the role. He had an actor friend named Jack Stang, a World War II veteran and former policeman that he thought was perfect. Spillane even financed and directed a short promo film himself with Stang playing Hammer. Seville told Spillane that he agreed. Elliott was out, and Stang was in. But Seville lied, and did not cast Stang in any of the following films. Spillane felt that Seville never cared about the books or the character and just wanted to make money. The last Mike Hammer film he produced, My Gun Is Quick, bombed at the box office. And it was because of Seville that Spillane decided to take a break from writing. He did not want to give Seville the opportunity to turn any more of his works into movies. Once Seville's option expired, Spillane immediately developed a television series starring Brian Keith as Mike Hammer. But the networks didn't want it. They felt that the show was too violent. The series was eventually reworked and recast with Darren McGavin and sold into syndication. Spillane's break from writing turned into a 9-year hiatus, during which time he indulged in his passion for flying, did some dirt track racing, and even traveled with the Clyde Beatty circus where he would get shot out of a cannon. Eventually, however, he returned to writing and published The Girl Hunters. This time, when it came to making the movie, producer Bob Fellows talked Spillane into playing his own character. The Girl Hunters was released in 1963 with Spillane in the lead and Shirley Eaton as his leading lady. Eaton would go on to appear in the James Bond film Goldfinger, ironic since booksellers had once marketed Ian Fleming as the British Mickey Spillane. There was a follow-up project planned called The Snake, but it was never filmed. Mickey continued writing. His wife at the time, actress, singer, and model Sherry Malinow even posed for some of the covers, and co-starred in The Delta Factor, a film based on one of Spillane's books. There were more films, 3 different Mike Hammer series, each starring Stacy Keach, and a popular series of commercials for Miller Beer starring Mickey and actress Lee Meredith, inspired by his books. After taking another break, this time for 18 years, Spillane published another Mike Hammer novel. The Killing Man was released in 1989, and Black Alley followed 6 years later. And in the 90s, after 50 years, he revived his old character of Mike Danger for a new audience of comic book customers. On July 17, 2006, Mickey Spillane passed away from pancreatic cancer, leaving behind a legacy that for decades had inspired other characters and other writers. Comic book author Frank Miller even said that Mickey Spillane was a direct influence on his work. But, even in death, Spillane was not finished turning out new stories. He left behind a treasure trove of unfinished manuscripts, plot summaries, and even ideas for screenplays which were to be taken up and completed by writer and friend Max Collins, who was handpicked by Spillane to do so. Once excoriated by critics, Spillane has taken his place in literary history alongside others of the detective genre like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler.